Oh, hello. My name is Mara, and welcome to Books Like Whoa. So I'm doing a video for you guys today that is going to require so many disclaimers on the front end that I know some of y'all are going to be annoyed, but let me just go ahead and tell you right now. Let me disclaim my disclaimers and tell you that if I did not specify some of these things, all I would be doing is seeing these comments, and then these poor unsuspecting people who I know are very well intentioned would very quickly be getting on my nerves, and then I would have to be like trying to not be snappy at people, and I just don't want to go through that basically. So today I am giving you my personal ranking of all of the Agatha Christie novels that I have read, which is all but, let's see here, I think I counted that I have 7 left that I have not yet read, and I've got some other caveats. But what I want to do is give you my personal ranking. So this is not what I think is objectively the best books. In fact, as we go through this, I'm going to flag ones where I know a lot of people would rank these quite a bit higher or would rank these quite a bit lower. This is based purely on my own preference. So there's that disclaimer that this is just me, my personal feelings about Agatha Christie. Number 2, I am including some short story collections, but not all. And just keep in mind that country to country, different short story collections are called slightly different things. I think I have mostly tried to use the ones that came out in the UK, but there are some exceptions to that. Like, just roll with it. If you see a short story collection that you think should be in here and isn't, there's a reason probably why I didn't include it. So there's that caveat, number 2. Number 3 is that I'm not including any Mary Westmacott. I'm not including any plays in this listing, so I'm leaving those out. Disclaimer number 4. There are 4 things that I have read, but that I don't remember well enough to include in this ranking. I need to do rereads. So that is I forget what the Parker Pine collection is, but that one, the Harley Quinn one, Murder is Easy. I know that I read that, but I remember virtually nothing about it. And same about Towards Zero. I know I read it, but I remember almost nothing about it. So those 4 books I've also not included for that reason. And is there any other disclaimers I need to give? I guess I'll just go ahead and tell you the 7 full novels that I have not yet read, which I will in due course. I actually think The Pale Horse will probably be the first one that I get to in this list, but okay, we'll start there. So I have not read The Pale Horse. I have not yet read The Man in the Brown Suit. I've not read Death Comes as the End. I have not yet read Destination Unknown. I have not yet read The Secret Adversary, N or M, or Postern of Fate. And I guess I should also include Partners in Crime I've not yet read, which is a short story collection. So those are my disclaimers. Or actually, I may have read some of Partners in Crime, because I definitely have read some Tommy and Tuppence short stories. Anyway, those are all my disclaimers. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna give you some stats about the 63 Agatha Christie books that I have read. And then we're gonna start at the bottom and work our way up in my ranking. So when I was looking through the 63 Agatha Christie books that I have indeed read, I decided to segment them out into 5 buckets, with the worst being bad. So ones that I think personally for me were bad, then ones that for me were just sort of mediocre. The biggest bucket is the ones that for me I would call fine. So they're enjoyable, they're good, like them just fine, but I don't think are like top tier. Then I have the bucket that I called really like, so ones that I really did enjoy, some of the better ones for me, but they're not all-time favorites. And then my top bucket is ones that I love, the ones that I would consider to be my all-time favorites. And when I was kind of doing some statistical analysis of it, what I found is that ones that I like to love consist of 74% of what I've read. So like pretty much 3/4 of what I've read from Agatha Christie I've either liked, really liked, or loved. And then about 1/4 of them, so 26%, I think were mediocre to bad for me. But I think that considering how many novels we're talking about, that is like pretty damn impressive. So that was sort of some statistical analysis that I did. And in terms of like the number of books in each bucket, so I have 4 ones that I think are bad, 12 ones that I think are mediocre. I've got, I think, 21 ones I think are fine that I liked. 14 that I really liked, thought that they were really good, and then I've got 11 that I consider to be my all-time favorites. So With all of that being said, I'm gonna start running through these. So at the beginning of each bucket, I will flash up my overall ranking, and then we will go through each individual book. And you'll notice that in some of these listings, I have things in either green or red text. In my list, if it has green text, what I mean by that is that I think most people would rank it higher than I do. And if it has red text, it's something that I think most people would probably rank lower. So anyway, let's get into the ranking, and we will start at the bottom with the bad category. Okay, so you guys can see here, I do have 4 books that I consider to be bad. Number 63 is Passenger to Frankfurt. This is what I believe to be Agatha Christie's worst book. There are very few redeeming qualities to it, in my opinion, other than occasionally like her charm and wit. But overall, this is, in my opinion, the worst book from her that I have read. Number 62 is The Clocks, which is an Hercule Poirot one, and it is the least successful Hercule Poirot mystery, in my opinion, though it was not the last written. The last written Hercule Poirot mystery was number 61, and that is Elephants Can Remember, which I actually think, you know, has some charm to it. I didn't have a terrible time reading that one, but I think, you know, it wasn't good. So that is number 61. And then number 60 is actually the only full Tommy and Tuppence book that I have read, and that is By the Pricking of My Thumbs. And again, I didn't have like the most miserable time reading this or anything, but I do think it's bad, and it reminds me of Elephants Can Remember and a couple of these other later ones in the way that it is bad. So those were the only 4 that I would call bad. So we can move quickly out of that. And now we can get into the mediocre category, which will have several, I think, controversial picks in it. So stay tuned. This is the part of the video where editing me pops in to tell you that I lost some of the footage, which it's always a lovely moment. So I am gonna cut in this little segment. Hopefully I won't have to do it again. We'll find out as I go. Next section is the mediocre section, or the okay section, the meh section. I did highlight 3 of these as ones that I thought might be a little bit controversial. So Hallowe'en Party, that was actually one that I have sentimental attachment to, so I get why people like that one. Endless Night and 3-Act Tragedy. All 3 of those are ones that I often hear people citing as ones that they really like that are not my personal favorites. So that's why I flagged those. Going back to number 59, that is Hallowe'en Party. As I was mentioning, I do have kind of like sentimental attachment to this particular one, and that is because it and The Hollow were the first 2 Agatha Christie books I ever read. I bought this in Heathrow on sort of like a whim. So while now that I've read all of the Christie canon, and now that I've reread that one as a part of Project Poirot, I would put it pretty low on the list. I do have, you know, feelings for it. Number 58 is Taken at the Flood. This is one that I don't really like very much at all, and my main problem with it is that, I don't know, I think that the character work and the tone of it is odd, and then there's also some allusions to domestic violence type things that I was not comfortable with. So number 58 was Taken at the Flood. Number 57 is The Mystery of the Blue Train. This is one that's, I don't think, a controversial pick because Agatha Christie herself thought that this was the worst book she ever did, which I clearly disagree with, but it's not one of her better ones. It's an early Poirot, and it's an early attempt for her to have kind of like a sweeping cast of characters in a sweeping setting, and I don't think it really came together. 56, another very controversial one because it is Endless Night. I personally just don't like this very much. It's too angsty and melodramatic for what I personally like in a Christie, but there are some people who cite this as like a top 5, top 10 type book for her. So I know that people who like that mode of Christie will like this better than I do. It's not my gig, not my journey, not my truth. So just not for me, but it's number 56. And then number 55 is Murder in 3 Acts is what it's called here, but 3-Act Tragedy is what I generally know it as. Yeah, this is one that, again, I think a lot of people really like much more than I do. My problem with it is I think it's just too staged, which, you know, there's an actor in it. That's kind of a pun, but it's just not my favorite Christie. I just don't like it that much. I have a whole review on it if you want to see more reasons as to why, but I think that gets us back to footage that I filmed in the past, so let me send you to the past. Then number 54 is the lowest ranked Marple on this list, and that is Nemesis. This is one that again is not without its charms, and it's something that I didn't have like an actively terrible time reading, but I do think that it's, in my view anyway, the clear weakest one of the Marple canon. It also has some extremely dicey things that it has to say about sexual assault that are just have not aged well. So there's that one at number 54. Number 53, I have Mrs. McGinty's Dead. Kind of middle of the road Hercule Poirot, like one of the weaker ones in my opinion, but it's okay. It's aight. Similarly for 52, which is Third Girl, which is an Hercule Poirot one, and I think actually the reason I put it a little higher is because I do think that it's an interesting evocation or point of view on the 60s in London. It's an interesting kind of take on that, but I don't think it's one of the better Hercule Poirot ones. And then 51 is one of the lower ranked sort of adventure ones I have, which is They Came to Baghdad by Agatha Christie. I have a distinct memory of reading this when I was traveling in Turkey. So anyway, for whatever that's worth. But yeah, I don't think that this is one of her better sort of like spy action adventure-y type books. I think it's one of the weaker ones, which is why I've got it kind of in the mediocre bucket. Number 50 is Hickory, Dickory, Death, which is another Hercule Poirot one, and this is one where I really find the use of the nursery rhyme title galling, considering how little it has to do with the actual plot. It also just feels a little bit kind of contrived in my opinion, but I think, you know, it's fine. If you already like Hercule Poirot, like, you won't have a terrible time reading this one. Number 49 is At Bertram's Hotel, and this is the other Marple one that I have kind of in the mediocre category. And this is one that, again, I actually had a pretty good time reading this on a page-to-page basis, which is why it's sort of higher in the mediocre bucket. But I do think that it reads much more like one of her action-adventure type books, and I just don't know that that's a great use of Miss Marple. I think that the ending of this is also kind of unsatisfying, so that's why I kept it in the mediocre category. And then the top of the mediocre category is Why Didn't They Ask Evans? Again, this is another action-adventure kind of one that I liked. Okay, it was fine, but I think even at the time, I read this sort of in like the height of my Christie fervor when I was just binging all her books. I remember just being like, oh, this one's not one of the better ones. There is a very personal idiosyncratic reason why I do have some affection for this one though, that I ranked it higher, but I don't want to get into that. So anyway, this is number 48, and that means we are now leaving the mediocre category and we are now getting into the I liked it category. This is all the sort of like, these ones are fine. Okay, and you can see the ranking that I have of the ones that I liked pretty well, that I liked fine. Again, there's more in this bucket that I think are controversial because I could see arguments for like a lot of things in this bucket of why people would really like them. I think this is more of like a your mileage may vary kind of situation. So some of the ones that I could definitely see people in particular ranking more highly than I did are Sad Cypress, Witness for the Prosecution, The Hollow, The ABC Murders, Peril at End House, A Murder is Announced, and The Body in the Library. I definitely have heard people mention all of those as favorites, so I wanted to call them out as I think some people would rank them much higher than I personally do, but these are just my opinions. Back into our listing, so number 47 is Sad Cypress, and the reason I put this sort of at the bottom of the ones that I liked but didn't love is that I think I personally didn't love the sort of like timeline duality happening here. I didn't particularly think it was necessary, and I think if that hadn't been there, I don't know that this book would be as well liked as it is by some people, so that's why I put it kind of at the bottom of my fine list. 46 is Cat Among the Pigeons, which is an Hercule Poirot one, and I really love the boarding school setting for this one. I don't think that overall the book is one of her best executed, but I really like that boarding school setting, so that's what puts it into a I liked it bucket. 45 is Witness for the Prosecution, and I should say, and Other Stories. And this is one of the short story collections that I included. I put this one towards the bottom. I don't think I like Witness for the Prosecution as much as a lot of people seem to. I don't know. For whatever reason, it just doesn't connect with me as much, and I don't think that this is a standout collection in my opinion, but you know, I know some people really like that one quite a bit. Then I have The Hollow, and that is another one. That's the other one of the two first Christies I ever read, so I do definitely have a special place for it in my heart, and I like it fine. It's just sort of a middle of the road one that I like pretty well, but not an all-time favorite. Then we have the ABC Murders by Agatha Christie, which I know is a lot of people's favorite. For me, the reason why I like it okay, but it's not one of my all-time favorites, is that I just don't necessarily like Hercule Poirot with a serial killer mystery. I don't know. I think it's an interesting play with what you can do with Hercule Poirot, but for me, it's not wholly successful. I wanted the serial murdery part to be more satisfying, but you know, I think the end solution is pretty interesting, so I can definitely see why people enjoy this one, but it's not like a top tier Christie for me, but I know it is for a lot of people. Number 42 is Peril at End House, which again, I know is a top tier one for a lot of people who think that this is like a really great example of a Hastings Poirot mystery. It's one of the earlier ones in the Poirot oeuvre, and it definitely is, again, in kind of peak Christie time. It's okay, but not one of my all-time favorites. Liked, but didn't love. 41 is The Murder on the Links, which is the second Hercule Poirot book, and I really love the sort of atmosphere in this one. I think the mystery itself is a little forgettable, but I really like all the characters and sort of the French setting of this one, so like that one. And then for number 40 is Death in the Clouds. So this is one of the more interesting examples that she has of a kind of locked room mystery type thing, but the locked room being an airplane in flight. So I think that that's something kind of different or special about that particular one. But, you know, I don't know, it's a super memorable one, but it's good, it's fine. Then we get into the 30s. So number 39 is Dumb Witness by Agatha Christie. And this is one that I think that the character work is really good. Don't know that the plot is as exciting, but I really like the characters in this one. And it's also, I believe, the last Hastings Poirot mystery you get until you get to the very end of the series. So for that reason, it is also notable. Also, look at the adorable doggo on the front here. And then from number 38 to number 34, we just have a bunch of Miss Marple. So I've recently read these and recently ranked them. And when I was kind of going through my overall ranking, this is what I kind of meant when I was wrapping that project up, where I was talking about how I think Miss Marple is much more consistent in quality than Hercule Poirot, because I put like nearly half of her oeuvre just like smack dab here in the middle of like, these are good, like these are really well done, they're enjoyable. I think that this is probably, from The Mirror Cracked Up, like if I was gonna divide this bucket of like ones that I liked into ones that like, yeah, I really do like this is probably the tipping point, because I really do like The Mirror Cracked. I think it's good. I don't think it's perfect, but that's why I have it as number 38. Number 37 is The Moving Finger. And this is one that I probably should have highlighted in green, because I know a lot of people really like this one a lot. And actually, Agatha Christie herself pointed to this one as one that she thought was particularly good. That wasn't quite my experience reading it, but like, thumbs up. I would recommend it. It's a good Marple. Likewise, with number 36, They Do It With Mirrors. This is one that maybe also I probably should have put in red, because I think other people might rank it lower, but I personally really liked it. It's sort of a Marple version of a country house mystery. And while I didn't necessarily think that the mystery was that difficult to solve, I did enjoy just my time kind of with Marple and the characters in that one. 35 is Miss Marple's Final Cases. So this is the second Miss Marple short story collection. I don't think it is the better of the two, obviously, but I think that there's a lot of really enjoyable, very Marple, like quintessential Marple-y kind of stories in there. So I can see why people really like that one. Then number 34 is 450 from Paddington, which is one that I remember quite fondly. I think that there's a couple of coincidences that are just a bridge too far in this one, but I absolutely love the final wrap-up scene in this, and I love the conceit of this one. So that's why I kind of put it up a little bit higher. To cap off this little spate of Marpleage, we've got 33, which is A Murder Is Announced, which is very much a classic Marple. Like, I think that's one of the better known ones. I've got a few issues with it, which is why I don't bump it up into the category of like, I really liked this one, but it's a super good Marple, very iconic, and has a lot of the trademark Marple touches that make it fun. So that rounds out that little run of Marple. And then we can transition back now to Hercule Poirot, and number 32 is Dead Man's Folly. This is one that I have personally some affection for, because it was one of the first Hercule Poirots I read. I have it as an audiobook, and I got it when I first read it as an audiobook, so I've listened to that audiobook so many times, so it's one I really know quite well. So that's why I have it so high up in this like, I like it category. 31 is the first, I think, Hercule Poirot story collection that I've got going, and this is The Labors of Hercules. I think that it is a little tortured at times, but I appreciate her attempt to connect them all together, and there's definitely some standout stories in that collection, even if it is one of the lesser Hercule Poirot short story collections, in my opinion. So number 30 is a Caribbean mystery. I feel very similarly about this one that I did about Dead Man's Folly, and that is that because it was one of the, it might have been been the first Marple I read, or one of the first Marples I read, and because it was one of the first audiobooks of Christie I had, I've listened to it so many times. I know that story really well, and because of that, I have a lot of just personal connection to it. So I really like a Caribbean mystery. Number 29, I believe, yeah, so we're cracking into the 20s now, is The Body in the Library. And yeah, this is another, I think, kind of iconic Marple, a very short one actually, and was written in peak Christie time, so it's a good one. And then Hercule Poirot's Christmas is a locked room mystery and quite violent. And I actually, when I reread this for Project Poirot, I realized how much I really do enjoy it. I like the country house aspect of it. I like the family kind of converging for Christmas thing. I love how utterly detestable the victim is and how much you're rooting for him to get it. So yeah, I liked this one a lot better on my reread than I thought that I would. So this one has stuck with me for whatever reason, which is why I put it towards the top of this category of ones that I like. Then 27 is Murder in Mesopotamia. This is one where the solution of this is kind of preposterous, but is really fun, and it has that atmosphere that Christie does with the Middle East quite well, I think. The way it wraps up makes no sense if you think about it in real life, but is really interesting and is like a fun solution. And I think this is another one that benefits from the fact that this is one of the first David Suchet adaptations I saw, and I was very charmed by it. So I think I kind of rose in my estimation because of that. So that's number 27. And then number 26, the top of the I like it category, is The Underdog and Other Short Stories by Agatha Christie. And this one is another Hercule Poirot collection. And I quite like the eponymous, the titular story in this one. So that's why I decided to put it over The Labors of Hercules, and I think just all around a really solid collection from her. Okay, so now we are into the realm of Agatha Christie's that I really like. This is like not quite top tier Christie for me, but like close. These are all ones that I have a lot of affection for, that I think are really good. Now this is where we start to get into ones that I have ranked probably too high in terms of their objective quality. So that would be The Seven Dials mystery, The Secret of the Chimneys, and The Big Four. I just like those, and we will get into it, but I acknowledge that their quality is not high. I just personally enjoy them. And then I did put The Murder of Roger Ackroyd as one that I think a lot of people would rank much higher than this. There's a couple of other ones in here that probably also deserve that designation. So maybe The Mysterious Affair at Styles, Five Little Pigs, and Evil Under the Sun are all ones that I definitely have seen people mention as favorites of theirs. So maybe put those in the mix as well. But let's start at the bottom of the ones that I really like with number 25, which is The Sittaford mystery. And the reason I really like this one is that it's not quite an isolated closed circle mystery, but it's got a lot of that same vibe. And I love the sort of snowed in quality of this one. So it's a good wintry read. Number 24 is Curtain, and this was the last Hercule Poirot in terms of the timeline, even though it was written in the early 40s, so it was written sort of peak Christie time. And I think that I don't know that other people like this one as much as I do. I find this a really satisfying conclusion to the Poirot storyline, and I think I just find this personally really moving. Like, this is a book that made me cry a lot in terms of kind of how it's wrapping up the relationship between Hercule Poirot and Hastings, and I think just kind of at the time of life that I read it, I really connected with a lot of the themes. I just personally really like this one, even though I know that's kind of a controversial one. Because I know not everybody likes that as the ending of Hercule Poirot. Then number 23 is The Big Four. And first of all, this cover is maybe the GOAT. I just love it so much. It's so crazy. It's a facsimile cover of a period cover that was promoting a movie adaptation, I guess, of this. And I need to caveat, this is racially very problematic. It is absurd, but it's also just such a rompy. It is Christie in her action adventure mode that it's so silly and over the top that like I forgive a lot of the things that are going on in it. It also is a bunch of basically interconnected short stories, which I personally am a sucker for interconnected short stories. That's probably also why I really like this. So totally concede that quality wise, this should be towards the bottom, but I like it. So there we go. And then similarly, number 22, I believe. Yeah, number 22 is The Secret of the Chimneys. Again, Quality-wise, this should be much further down, but I don't care. This is the Big Four, and then the Seven Dials mystery were some of the first action-adventure ones from her that I read, and I just really liked all of them. It's so silly and it's filled with dumb people being dumb, and I just like it. Like, it's just sort of rompy fun, so that's why I've got it so high, even though I totally acknowledge quality-wise shouldn't be there, but it probably gets the benefit of being early in my Christie reading career and me happening to just really like Christie in that mode. And then number 21 is One to Buckle My Shoe. I actually quite like the sort of political characterization of this one, and I think that the mystery elements of this are really satisfying, the way that the puzzle comes together. Number 20 is Five Little Pigs, also known as Murder in Retrospect. And I do think that Christie does this sort of like investigating a murder from the past / like cold case. She does that pretty well. And I think that this is one of the better examples of it. I personally have a different one that I like even better, but I think a lot of people would point to this as the best example of that type of plot from her. And I do think it's very effective. It's like a super solid Christie, and I totally see why a lot of people have it as a favorite. Number 19 is Murder in the Mews, which is 4 novellas. And I absolutely love this collection. I think I listed it as one of my recommended places of where to start with Hercule Poirot. I've got a video on that somewhere. And I stand by that recommendation. I think if you read this, you would get a lot of insight into sort of how she uses Hercule Poirot. You would also see some trademark Christie twists, kind of character types and plot types. Like, I think that this is a really good representation of a lot of what she does well. And it's one of my favorite kind of short story or novella collections from her. Then number 18 is another Marple, and that is A Pocket Full of Rye. This is definitely the best version of a country house mystery from Marple. I do think that I probably would have liked this book better if Poirot had been the detective though, instead of Marple, because I just think he works better in a country house mystery than Marple does. That's just a personal opinion. But I do think that the quality of this one is extremely high. Again, another nursery rhyme. If you guys will remember from Project Poirot, I was just like, ugh, I was getting so annoyed with them. This is one that is a little tortured, but I think she mostly pulls it off. So I'll give her a pass on this one. And then number 17 is The Murder of Roger Ackroyd. This is a book that many would put in contention as her objective quality-wise, her best. It has a trademark, like, landmark innovation in the mystery genre in terms of how she executes a certain plot type. And I like this one a lot. It's not a personal favorite, I think, because it had been hyped to me as one of her best. And I did guess what the innovation here was, I think at about the 50% mark. And so I think I had less the like, oh, this is amazing aspect to it. And I think if people hadn't hyped it up to me so much, maybe I would have ended up liking it better. But anyway, I can tell you that, like, objectively, yeah, this is one of her best ones. In terms of just a personal favorite, it doesn't score as highly with me, but I still have this in my really like it category. I really like this one. And then another one that I have ranked too high in terms of objective quality, but personally, I just really love the Seven Dials mystery. This is another one that I had as an audiobook early in my Christie adventure, so therefore it was one that I re-listened to quite a bit, and I'm sure it benefited from the fact that I did that. But I love Bundle, I love the whole little gang. I enjoyed this nonsense, fun romp. Number 15 is Evil Under the Sun, which again, I think in objective terms is probably one of Christie's best. It's a very, very effective version of an Hercule Poirot story, and it has a particular twist or plot type that I find very satisfying in a Christie. So yeah, I really, really enjoy that one. Number 14 is a standalone, and that is Sparkling Cyanide. I do think that this is slightly overdramatic when I did a reread of this in the last year or so, but I still really like it. I like the character work. I like what the ultimate kind of twist is, and I really like its sort of interrogation of family dynamics. This facsimile cover is also very awesome. So anyway, I definitely, this is one of my favorite standalones from her. Number 13 is The Mysterious Affair at Styles, which is the first Hercule Poirot book. And if you go all the way back to my original version of Where to Start with Agatha Christie, I mentioned that this is my favorite Christie. So back 2 years ago, I would have told you this is my favorite one, and now I have it at number 13. So that just tells you a lot about when you do a lot of rereading at an older age or just like reevaluate things. I don't know. I mean, I still think that this is an absolutely excellent example of what Hercule Poirot does well. I think that this is a great place to start. I mean, if you just want to read Hercule Poirot straight the way through in terms of order of publication, I think that that's a perfectly legitimate strategy. Yeah, I have a lot of fondness for this one. It's a very, very good Agatha Christie and totally a worthy place to start if you want to start at the beginning with her. And then my highest one, the one that was sort of on the bubble of between I really like it and I absolutely love it, so this isn't quite top shelf Christie, but very close, is Appointment with Death. And that is because I love the Middle Eastern atmosphere in this. I love the family dynamics. I love how hateable the person who gets killed is. I love just like, I think that the overall kind of tone and mood of this one is really creepy, and that's not a mood that she always goes for. We'll talk about like her best version of creepy here in a little bit, but this is a very creepy book, I think. So in terms of just atmosphere, I really like it. Yeah, this is just one of my very favorite Christies. Not quite all-time favorites, but very close. And with that, we can move into my top shelf picks. So I have 11 books that I kind of agreed with myself are my all-time favorite Christies, my very favorites. So this is the overall listing of them. And on here, you can see that there's only one that I think is sort of a controversial pick, and that is Poirot Investigates. And that is because I love that. That's like my favorite Poirot short story collection. I really love Christie short stories, so I think I probably like it even better than most people do, which is why I would say it's a little bit controversial. But moving into it, number 11 is that book, Poirot Investigates. As I was saying, I just love Christie short stories. This is my favorite Poirot Hastings collection. I really love kind of the character development in this, even though they were not written all at the same time. I do think that there's sort of a character arc here in terms of the dynamic between Poirot and Hastings, and I love how Hastings gets like more and more exasperated with Poirot as time goes on. Again, this is one that I had as audio early on in my Christie adventuring, so I've listened to it a lot of times, which is probably part of why I like it so much, but I really do love this one. It has a very special place in my heart. One of my very favorite Poirots for sure. And then right after that at number 10 is The 13 Problems by Agatha Christie, and this is the Marple short story collection that, again, if you had asked me at the beginning of Mission Marple what my favorite Marple was, I would have said this because I love Christie short stories and I think Marple works particularly well in the short story form. I also love that there is a connection in these short stories, like there's an overall sort of like narrative device that is holding them together. I find that really enjoyable. I think that there's some great classic Christie short stories in here. Yeah, this is just absolutely superb and definitely a worthy entry into our top 10 here. Number 9 is Lord Edgware Dies, which is an early Hercule Poirot one. And I just love the kind of twists in here, and I love some of the character work, which is why I have it so high. And yeah, I think that this is just a really excellent example of prime Poirot time, and this is a good Poirot Hastings one. Number 8 is our first encounter with Miss Marple, and that is The Murder at the Vicarage. So I guess I would now say that I think the first book in the Marple canon I like better than the first book in the Poirot canon, which is something I never would have said before I did those rereading projects, but it's true. Number 8 is The Murder at the Vicarage, and if you want to talk like class, like when you think Marple, you're thinking of the world of Marple as represented in The Murder at the Vicarage. Like this, to me, in terms of just like the perfect Marple novel that feels like Marple, this is it. And I think that having the vicar be the narrator was a very effective strategy. He's quite similar to Hastings in a lot of ways, and I honestly wish that there had been more Marple books with him as the narrator or the point of view character, because I think he just works really well in kind of that function. So it, however, is not my very favorite Marple, because my very favorite Marple is actually Sleeping Murder, which was the last one published, even though I believe it was the third one written. And I don't know why I ended up loving this one so much, but I think it was a combination of I read it, like the point in my life where I read it, it's one of the last really good ones I had left to read that I hadn't read already. And so I think I probably savored it even more than I might have if I'd read it earlier. I really love the character work in this one. This is another one of those trying to figure out a crime in the past kind of plots, which I quite like from her. And yeah, I just absolutely love this. And this is my favorite Marple book. And then number 6 is After the Funeral, and this is one that is pretty late in the canon in terms of when it was written, considering how much I like this. I think this was the late 50s late 50s, I think. And that's not necessarily peak Christie time anymore, but I think that this is a really, really good example of a variant on a country house mystery. Again, this is all about family dynamics, and I tend to just really like that in books in general, where families have complicated relationships, and when it's a mystery, when that is sort of the clues that you have to figure out what's going on. I just think this is really effective. I also really have a fondness for the David Suchet adaptation, so that may also be part of why I enjoy it. I also just think as a book it stands on its own, and I just really enjoy it. Okay, we are rounding the bend here. We have entered the top 5. We've got 3 Poirots and 2 standalones to get to. So number 5 is Death on the Nile. And I just love the shit out of this book. There's so many things I love about it. I do think that even though independent of the other factors I have, this is just, I think, objectively one of her best ones. I recently gave this to my best friend to read, and she absolutely loved it. This is an isolated closed circle mystery set on a boat in the middle of the Nile. I love the character dynamics in this one. These are some of the most compelling characters, I think, in the whole canon, particularly with the character of Jacqueline. I just really enjoy the characterization there. I think that the murder is ingenious. I think that I just love the whole, I love an isolated closed circle mystery. 3 of these top ones, that's what they are. But I love this idea that all these people are kind of converged in one place. They all have a reason why they may have done it, and then we're figuring out who. Contributing to my love of this is also how much I love the movie adaptation that stars Peter Ustinov. So yeah, this is number 5, and I really just love it. Number 4. It's a standalone, and it is Crooked House by Agatha Christie. And I think that this is one of her most sophisticated, I guess looking at it, I guess I will say it's the most sophisticated examination of sort of a family dynamic in Christie. I think that the kind of ending of this one could have gone really wrong, and to me, she pulls it off. It's basically just a character examination and kind of trying to figure out which combination of characteristics would lead to what kind of person. It, I think, is sort of the most sophisticated version that she has of her whole blood will tell theme. And I really, really love this one. It's one of my all-time favorites, clearly. Number 3 is Murder on the Orient Express, and this is definitely up there in terms of iconic Christie's, probably a top 3 one. There's been several adaptations of this that people enjoy. My clear favorite is the one from the 1970s. God, I love that movie. It's one of my favorite movies. And this book, again, is just an iconic, isolated, closed circle mystery. This time they are all snowed in on a train. They gotta figure out who done it, and Poirot gets shit done, gets the job taken care of. I love this one. It's one of my very favorites, which is not a hot take, but there you go. And then, so these top 3, I kind of went back and forth with myself on quite a bit, but I landed on, I clearly landed in the order I did. I ultimately decided that And Then There Were None would be my second favorite. I don't know. For whatever reason, I couldn't quite put it as my all-time favorite, but it is up there. It is a isolated closed circle mystery, and the best one ever done, in my opinion, in terms of creepy atmosphere. Like, here you go. I love how a huge part of what she's doing in this book is building up existential dread, and sort of like part of the killer's preying upon them is making them like go a little crazy together. And I just think that it ratchets up the tension in a masterful way. I just love everything about this. This is an amazing book. There's a reason why it's so iconic, why it's so, assigned in schools when they're doing a mystery study, why it's been adapted so many times, why it's been copied so many times. It's a masterpiece. And there are things that you can critique about it, certainly, but in terms of just like a genre defining book, this is one of those. And it's the best isolated closed circle mystery I've ever read, and probably ever will read. I don't know. I hope I find one I like even better, but probably this is the best one. And then, dun 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 dun, in terms of things that were duking it out for the top spot, I was between Murder on the Orient Express, And Then There Were None, and Cards on the Table. I think on any given day, it could have been any one of those 3. Today, I'm gonna say Cards on the Table is my very favorite Agatha Christie mystery. And I think because it is not quite an isolated closed circle mystery, but it's adjacent. It's basically a locked room mystery. And it is purely Poirot using his little gray cells to figure out what a kind of people these 4 people are, and just figuring out from that who must have done it. And I love Ariadne Oliver in this, is so much fun. I like the other detectives who are involved, Colonel Race, etc. I just think this has some really great recurring detective or recurring character work in it. It has great new characters to it. I really love the kind of different, it almost gives you the same joy as a short story collection because there's all these like little side investigations happening throughout, but it still is moving very focusedly towards the ultimate in solution of the murder at hand. It evokes the period in, I think, a really fun way. I love the shit out of this book, and I guess I would say, at least right now, I would call it my very favorite Agatha Christie book. Definitely my favorite Poirot book. There you go. I absolutely love this one, and I would put it at number 1. So there you go. There's my very personal, idiosyncratic ranking of all of the Agatha Christie books that I have read at this point. Like I said, I do have 7 novels and I guess 1 short story collection that I need to polish off to be done with her oeuvre, but I don't really foresee any of those dislodging the very top or the very bottom, probably. Well, I say that, who even knows? Maybe I will have to revisit this entire video in a year because I will have read some of these and it will have drastically changed up my rankings, but I'm hoping not. I don't think so. Oh, and I should just mention that I just did my personal rankings, and then I am going to do an updated where to start with Agatha Christie now that I have reread all of the Poirot and Marple ones. I feel like I'm in a better position to give my assessment of that. So I will have an updated version of that up for you guys here in a few weeks. So those are my personal rankings. Definitely would love to hear what other people's favorite and least favorite Christies are. And I know I gave a lot of disclaimers at the top, but that is because I want to encourage productive conversation and I don't want to get bogged down into kind of comments like nitpicking my criteria for the list. I'm not really interested in having that conversation, so just caveat there. But I do appreciate you guys watching, and if you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, follow me on the social medias if you are so inclined. I have all of that information listed in the description box below, and thank you so much for watching. Hope you guys are having a great day, and I will just talk to you soon. Bye!